Attention higher leaders, it's time to shake up your marketing and enrollment strategy. Join us at Insights EDU February 17th to the 19th, 2026 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida for a beachfront experience and the best higher education marketing and enrollment management conference. Early bird pricing ends December 15th, 2025. Register now at insightsedu.com. The future unbound is at Insights EDU 2026.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the EdUp Experience podcast. I am your host, Dr. Jody Blinko, and with us today, Vice President of Enrollment at Rice University, Yvonne Romero. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about our conversation today, Yvonne. We have a lot in common, a lot to talk about. Let's start first. I want to hear more about your journey. Talk to us about how you got to the place where you are now, leading a growing enrollment team at Rice University.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to share my journey. I think we all have really interesting paths that get us to a spot in higher education. I'm certainly amongst them as well. When I was a high school student, I lived out in California and thought for sure I'd go to one of the amazing public institutions out in California. But having been born on the East Coast and never remembered living there, I was always curious about East Coast schools as well. So I applied to 3 UC schools and 1 private school in Massachusetts that was really good in math and science. And lo and behold, I got in and discovered that I was on my way to Cambridge, to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And during my 4 years there, I realized that the amazing opportunities that a world-class institution like an MIT, like Rice, offers to students, and the incredible resources that these institutions have to support student success and to support students in their journeys, both while at school and beyond. And so as an undergrad, I worked in the graduate admissions office. So I was doing the back end stuff, supporting the graduate admissions team. But I really came to believe that I can't be so unique. Being the only one from my high school, probably the only one from my county that went to MIT at that time. And that there had to be so many other kids like me, that if we knew about the educational opportunities that were available and with especially institutions with incredible resources, that it could help open eyes about the amazing offerings that higher education in the United States has. And so I was one of the few people who, leaving college, wanted to come and actually do college admissions. And there's a job at the institution at MIT where you could be an admissions counselor. But that year, the person who had that role wanted to stay an extra year longer. And so I had to return to California and ended up teaching math to high school students. And for me, that actually was probably one of the most impactful job that I ever had, just really seeing what it was like to be at a high school, the incredible work that goes into it, as well as the incredible challenges that students face. Because I was often teaching kids that I didn't take classes with. They were the non-honors, non-AP type classes, but still college going. So Algebra 2, algebra, things like that. But really seeing a lot of very, very talented students, maybe in classes that were not as rigorous as they could actually handle, but also seeing the challenges that teachers face. I did that for a year and then thankfully was offered a job as a counselor in admissions at MIT. So I went back to my alma mater. I ended up staying there for 8 years and also getting a master's degree from Harvard. So during that period of time, did both. I left to get an MBA. I knew I wanted to be an administrator in higher education. And at that point, finishing my master's at Harvard, I really wondered, what's the next step to help build my toolkit? Could have done the PhD lane, or then I thought an MBA. and really learn how to be and lead an organization. So I took off and returned to California, was lucky to study at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, really enjoyed that opportunity. And then ended up working after that at the College Board. So did a few different roles in higher education services, then in the corporate strategy division, and then ultimately with the SAT program. And so that was maybe 7.5 years, but I was really eager to get back on a college campus and work with the people that I was engaged with at the College Board, the senior leaders, the directors of admissions, the deans of admissions, et cetera. And really that had always been a goal of mine. And I felt it was really time for me to get back. What was interesting, though, is that not having led a big office, I found it really challenging to land the director of admissions roles. I applied to smaller private institutions, larger private institutions, and kept getting passed up despite my background and what I brought to the table. And so ended up learning about a position at the University of Pennsylvania that was the director of strategic planning. And so when I met with the then Dean, Eric Furta, he invited me to come in and we were talking about the role, and reading the description, I'm like, this is the perfect job for me. But somehow in the posting, I thought there was an internal candidate. So I said, I really, hope you consider me for this job, but if you don't hire me, I'm going to take this job description to the peer institutions of Penn and try to get a job with this description because it's the perfect job for me. And so Eric was so delightful. He's like, no, you're a strong contender, and thankfully he hired me into that role.
What a great story! All that piece all by itself of you saying, you know what, I hope you'll consider me, but if you don't, this is perfect for me, and I'm going to take this somewhere else. I love that. I love it.
Oh my goodness. But what was actually also a bit funny about me in this particular role with that title, Vice Dean and Director of Strategic Planning, and having been a corporate strategist, is that I wanted to take the practices of doing proper strategic planning into an enrollment or admissions office and enrollment division. And so that's what I did. We did strategic planning, and I asked, I had a team of people working with me, but I asked, if I only get 5% of their time, they're not going to learn how to do this work. I need at least 20% of their time, even though the project was going to occur during the evaluation season. And so I'm like, give me 20% of their time, and then I can help work with them to develop the strategy, do all the research that needs to be done for proper strategic planning. And then when we come out of it and out of the reading in April, we'll be ready to learn all that my team found. That ended up being an application that we continued to apply once we got through the strategic plan and really understood what we needed to do and focus on. Penn had been growing applications year after year, but when we looked at the data, we realized that it had not grown at the same pace of its peer institutions. And so if you looked at the compound annual growth, it was lower than the average of the peers that Penn competes against. And so we asked the question, will we be able to read all those applications if we had kept up with the average of our peers? We were about 6,000 applications short of where we should have been. And that answer was no. There's no way we could read the applications. We were already hemorrhaging applications, and it was so challenging. And it's what led us to develop a new mode of reading applications. So my role in that was to say, we need a model for evaluating that will take 36,000, will read 36,000 applications, be a fair and equitable review for every applicant, that does contextualized review. And I set maybe 4 or 5 parameters, and a couple of admission officers who were part of the team that focused on evaluation proposed to us one day this new model of, why are we reading applications by ourselves and taking about a bunch of copious notes that's already in the file? What if we read the applications together and put only relevant notes and pointing people where the the information actually sits, because with Slate, you can read the whole application live and multiple people can be in it at one time. And I remember the hair on the back of my arm standing up, because I thought, wow, we could revolutionize how applications are read with the individualized contextual review. And that started what ended up being a really interesting path. We shared it. We kept it secret for 2 years, and then began to, because we wanted to perfect the model, and then shared it out slowly but surely. And today, I think it's adopted by over like 300 to 500 colleges and universities using this
Wow.
team-based committee approach in reading an application.
That's
So
incredible.
it was a lot of fun. It really was. And it was
And
an example of thinking outside the box.
yeah. And I have so much appreciation for you and your approach to say, you know what, let's take a step back. Let's look at this comparison. Could we have kept up, looking at the stages of the funnel and really taking the strategic planning approach to a whole other level and having it serve the institution where it has an ROI, where it has an impact. I think the strategic planning concept or word is thrown around, and a lot of times it ends up being this 9 or 10 or 25 page document that sits on a shelf and doesn't mean anything. And you have really, as you called it, a model. You've built a model that serves an institution, serves a purpose, and is a pathway for what I would also imagine too is a better student experience, a better employee experience, and is offering ROI on so many different levels, not just the number of students, but you look at things like we spend money on marketing and these inquiries come through. And, if we are better able if we're able to do more at those middle stages of the funnel, that's going to lower things like cost per acquisition. And so anyway, there's so much there.
It was really a lot of fun. And I mentioned that 20% of my team's time to devote to the strategic planning during the evaluation cycle. We ended up, and continue to this day, to hold 1 day a week where staff are not reading during the evaluation season, so they could put time to the projects that they're actually responsible for leading all throughout the year. It slows down during the evaluation time period, that 5 months from November to March, but there's still things they have to do to keep it afloat. And so that was an unexpected outcome, that we were actually going to spend less time, no more weekends, no more evenings, but you do have to read live with your coworker. And it ended up leading to my ultimate dissertation. So I ended up enrolling at the executive exec doc in higher education management program at Penn. And I did my dissertation to assess what types of changes, both process changes, but also mindset change, occurred as a result of putting in such a radical new evaluation model, from what other institutions had been doing. So I evaluated 5 campuses that were implementing what we called CBE into their environments and how they went about doing it. One was huge, like a really big private institution on the East Coast. Another was a liberal arts college, women's college. So just a nice range of a mid-sized university. So it was really fun to be able to do that and take it into my dissertation and kind of see what the impacts were. So
I'm super curious. And then I want to hear all about Rice University, but I'm super curious. You mentioned not only the process changes in that you were gathering with your dissertation work, but also the mindset changes. Yeah. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think that's an area that is often overlooked in a variety of ways. So I'm curious what came through there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the big ahas that we had to realize, that it wasn't just a matter of outsmarting the issues, that we actually had to behave in a different way, but still uphold our belief system of individualized review, contextual review, making sure we read all the documents, have a conversation. But that's a very different practice than just sitting, with your pajamas curled up and reading a file and writing some notes down. One of the things that ensured that we did daily professional development, because any pairing would always include a seasoned reader and possibly a new reader or another seasoned reader. But it meant that every new reader was always paired with somebody seasoned that understood how to do the process. So daily professional development. But the mindset aspect is like there was many aspects of how you read a file, what it means to read, all of that shifted significantly. And so that was some of what I was looking at. And and then every campus can mold the process kind of in the way that it works for them. One campus only did it during early decision, and then the people wanted the regular decision to be more of the individual reading approach. But for early, it was their big training time. So because they had all those touch points with working with each other, they could really reinforce that week of training that we mostly and usually only do is a week of evaluation training before we launch everybody to go out and read the thousands of applications. But I agree with you. Mindset change is probably one of the reasons why people, when they reflect on higher education, is that it moves so slowly. And part of that is because it's very entrenched in the way we do things. So it was very exciting to be on the ground floor of implementing a new concept, a new idea, and then seeing it thrive to the point that, just a side story. I was once at a bar at a professional conference, just chatting with some colleagues, and this guy came up to us and, starts to introduce me to this concept of committee-based evaluation and read in teams. And he's going on and on about all the benefits of reading this way. And my friend who's standing next to me kind of chuckled and he said, "You realize she's the one that was part of the team that created this whole process." And then he stops and just gives me this huge hug. He's like, "You changed my life."
Oh my gosh. How amazing though. Like funny, but at the same time for him to say, "You've changed my life." That is the gravity of what process change can do and something like that. That's amazing. And I'm sure you weren't expecting that either, for that just to kind of come up organically. And you're like, here I am. Yes, I was part of that team.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Wow.
And but from there, I did about 7.5 years at Penn. It was a great experience. And then Rice was looking for a vice president for enrollment, and so this was really my opportunity to fulfill my dream to become a chief enrollment officer at an institution. And Rice is just such a fantastic institution, right there here in Houston, Texas, with so many students and doing so many great things. And so from an enrollment perspective, especially looking at the demographics, I knew that Rice is sitting in a really great spot with so many talented kids in our city and in our state and the surrounding states, all wanting to get an elite top education, and to be able to come and do this work for Rice has been a real joy in my professional career.
So tell us more about Rice. In a climate where there are so many unknowns and so many variables and institutions, I will say the word just surviving. You all are thriving from an enrollment standpoint. So talk to us just about the culture, the approach with students. What is helping to fuel this enrollment growth that you all have experienced over the last couple of years, and anything else that those of us who are listening need to hear about Rice University?
If you think you can coast into 2026, think again. Insights EDU is coming February 17th to the 19th, 2026, and it's taking over Fort Lauderdale for a beachfront experience. It's the event that will flip your marketing and enrollment strategy on its head. 3 days, over 65 expert speakers, and over 40 sessions. Zero fluff. Just powerhouse strategies from the most anticipated platforms like Google, Reddit, Meta, MIQ Digital, and the most forward-thinking schools in the nation. You'll get the real wins, the bold ideas, and the hands-on tactics to grow programs. drive engagement, and create the student experience today's modern learner demands. The question is, are you ready to lead, or will you get left behind? Mark your calendar, bring your team, and secure your spot at insightsedu.com. That's insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15, 2025. See you in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the things that, I'm a scholar of higher education institutions. So I've studied them and sort of watched over, from the sidelines as places have grown. And I've always believed that institutions, should really invest in who they are and who they are truly. And one of the, few of the things about Rice is its commitment to excellence. Its commitment to excellence in research, excellence in teaching, particularly undergraduate teaching, opportunities to collaborate. When I arrived, it was 4,000 undergraduates. We just completed aspirations to grow by 20%. So we're now over 4,800 undergraduates, and we've next launched another 10% growth. So our aim in about 4 years or so is to get to 5,200 undergraduates. I think for us, it's really about creating opportunities to extend that sort of specialness of what makes Rice great. I talked about the excellence, but together that goes with a culture of care and collaboration. So students who want a Rice education, they want to be, they're a lot of them are grad school bound. They want to be researchers. They want interdisciplinary opportunities to actually do real research or internships, and all of that can be done at Rice. But they want to do it in an environment where people care about each other, that they're not having to be cutthroat against their fellow students, that it's all about me versus you, and I'm one-upping you. That just is so antithetical to the Rice environment, the Rice values. Here, students championing each other on. Faculty are genuinely curious about how students are evolving and what they're doing. And we have quite a number of support services to make sure that students are being successful and getting their needs met. And so, I think part of the reason for so much of this success is that, and we did, when I started at Rice, we did another strategic plan. I'm like, this is how you understand where you're at, because why change things if they don't need to be changed? And how do you know that you're going after the things that will make the biggest difference? And so we did a lot of market research, and what we saw was that what students want is the education that Rice University is providing. And our biggest challenge amongst any others is just getting the word out, letting more people know, helping them understand what the Rice education provides. It's also what led to the Rice investment. So this was at the time, revolutionary financial aid program. We knew that one of the big barriers for students thinking about a Rice education was if they could afford it. So in 2008, with the recession, students and families became much more price sensitive. And it wasn't just parents kind of being cautious about, is the school affordable? But students were also taking schools off their list that they thought were too pricey, that it would put their parents in a financial bind if they enrolled at that school. So we knew that the affordability message was a big one. At the same time, the university leadership, together with our alumni, were really interested in, are we meeting the needs of our middle-class students? A lot of these families are feeling priced out. And by middle class, upper middle class, I mean, the definition of middle class changes with the college-going population versus the general population. But these are families that work really hard. They might be a teacher and, firefighter, or, a community college professor and a nurse or something. So, they're making good income, but they feel priced out of the education. And so with the Rice investment, we were the first to be very transparent in what our financial aid was offering in terms that families understood. So we created thresholds that if you made $75,000 or less, you're going to get tuition, fees, room and board covered. So nearly a full ride. If you make between 75,000 and 140,000, you're guaranteed to get full tuition covered. And between
Wow.
140 and 200,000, you're guaranteed to receive half tuition. And so they know their income, and they can look up the tuition and the cost of attendance. And these are numbers that they can actually work with versus expected family contribution and, these terminologies that you
So true. Yeah.
at the end of the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are speaking my language on so many levels. When you talked about, one of the first things that we did was we implemented the strategic planning process, but we also looked at market research, because how can you address something when you don't really know what the problem is? And I often see that happening where operations are just, well, spend more money on marketing, or do this, or hire more people, or we need to invest more in traveling to different fairs. And while there might be validity to that, we're not basing those recommendations in data. So that's one thing that stood out of what you were just sharing to me, of how important that really understanding and diagnosing what are the 1, 2, 3, or where do we prioritize our energy and our investment? And I use those words in every way: financial investment, energy investment, but then also what you're talking about with, I've often heard the 4 main things that are potential obstacles for students are time, money, value, ability. What's the return on my investment? Can I afford this? Time, not so much for a traditional student, but maybe more for an adult or online learner. And then the ability question. But the fact that Rice has understood, hey, these numbers need to make sense in a way that okay, yeah, I know what my yearly salary is, and I can see right now, without having to do a FAFSA or a bunch of other things, what is the financial picture for me? And that accessibility to that information, and does this institution fit my short list? I know that really quickly. That's brilliant. And just from a student experience perspective, I don't know that institutions, when they talk about, we want to do what's in the best interest of the student, or we really take into account what's in the best interest of the student, that financial piece in that way is often left out. That's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We were really excited and, launched it, saw a huge increase the first year. And we've seen other institutions follow, that the model of kind of that clarity and just being open. And, around the same time, we removed any loans from our packaging, and just really trying to hit home that message of affordability. But here's the thing about higher education, is that no matter how well you do one year, next year you've got to go out and do the same thing and inform all the families and get them back to that space where they understand. So it's constantly moving, and you always have a new crop of families that are going through this process through the very first time. And so we have to be just out, out there, active in front, just to really communicate Rice. And so we that continues to be a challenge, a challenge, but something that we always have to put attention to every year to ensure that the families, the counseling community, are aware of these opportunities. We're getting there, but again, just the fact that it's a new crop of kids, a new family going through it for the very first time, is the work of an enrollment officer.
Yeah.
Did I just say that? Don't you get it yet?
And this question I have for you might be too in the weeds. So if you say, hey, skip that one, we can absolutely skip it. But I'm curious with what you've done for strategic planning for institutions, but just the enrollment world in general. When one of the common challenges that I see enrollment operations up against are, and this is connected a little bit to what you were saying of getting the word out. I oftentimes work with institutions that maybe don't really have a sound plan for territory performance management, and we just go into territories because we've always done it, or we should be there, or we think we should, or our competitors are there. Any recommendations, advice, or best practices that you could share with our listeners to say these would be 1, 2, or 3 things to look at as it relates to strategic planning, but also maximizing where to spend your time and money and energy to get the most out of that investment?
Yeah, and I think, thank you. I mean, oftentimes people or offices think just do more, and it's really about doing more well and in the right places to have an impact. So early on, when I was at MIT, we had this brilliant like marketing designer, gentleman who came from RISD, Harvard and RISD. And he's just, one of these just looks at things and sees the world in a whole completely different way. And we ended up at the time launching this really quirky, but just totally fit the ethos of MIT application. And I just saw the impact that having a well-developed marketing strategy can have on raising the floor. And so it doesn't matter how great your recruitment plan is. If your marketing plan isn't hitting the messaging points and getting and in a lot of places where students are and parents. So you've got to work with both populations. And that really that's the efforts that kind of hit the largest population of individuals that you'll be engaging with. And so the marketing is one component of it, but it has to go arm in arm with recruitment. And so recruitment and having a territory management, part of it is like, do you know what you're trying to get done? Do you know who exists in those communities that you're recruiting? And do you know how to modify your messaging for the needs of the students and parents and or educators in the communities that you're engaging with? And it can be challenging depending on the type of activity. If you're doing a full-blown information session with families from all over, you have to try to hit various messages that might land with more emphasis for high needs family, but you still need to capture the kind of the overall experience for families where the cost is not the thing that they're going to make a decision about where they're going to school. And so we're actually working on that now. We are really focusing on how to really build out a sophisticated recruitment plan and strategy. One of the first things I did when I came to Rice, there was only one person with marketing or communication in their title on our team. So we built out a marketing team, an enrollment marketing and communications team, and they're just incredibly talented. We've since won a number of awards for our marketing initiatives. And so that has led a lot of the success for the overarching increase in applications, I think, coupled with the excitement of Rice's own growth. And it's not just enrollment growth, it's also growth in faculty. We're committed to increasing faculty by 200. The growth of facilities so that we're not losing that special thing that makes Rice Rice. So yeah, recruitment, territory management. I think with all of those, you need to know what you're trying to do. And I will admit that there have been times that I think in years where we were recruiting for the sake of recruiting and not doing it in as strategic a way as I would like. So it's absolutely one of the core focus for our team in the coming few years.
I love what you said, and I don't know that I'm going to get this right verbatim, but I think you said something to the effect of teams oftentimes think they just need to do more versus doing more of the right things, or in its essence, which is so spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think probably one of the challenges that I've seen as a leader, because we've had innovative ideas, we've had, some latitude to be very creative in things that we wanted to develop. But we were getting at a point, even as a leadership team within my division, where we realized that we really need to begin investing in particular our middle bench, the staff who support the territory managers and or financial aid officers and so forth. And so this whole last year, we've engaged in an executive development program for anyone who supervises in the enrollment division to really help build their skill set. Because one of the things that we found is that though we had some of these big ideas, if you were in an office where this is just the way things were always done, that requires a different skill set than thinking outside the box, being innovative, creating new things. And though there was a desire to get to a better state, but it wasn't always matched with an understanding or the skills to get us there. And so I feel like after this is my 8th year at Rice, that we're now in the point 2 version of strategic planning. We refreshed our strategic plan last year. We have bold new ideas of where we want to go, and just thinking about how we can now put focus in different areas. Now that we figured some of the other parts out that we fixed, how do we really focus on team and talent development, recruitment, as I mentioned, optimizations and efficiencies throughout all the systems that we run. And so just kind of going at it in a new way. We're about to kick that off a week from today. So never a dull moment.
I was going to say it's right around the corner. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, you've mentioned this a couple times. I think this is also a really good place to start to wrap up our conversation. But you said something earlier that I didn't get a chance to ask a question about, and then you just touched on it again. You mentioned earlier that one of the things that you found when you did the market research is that the students want the education that Rice offers. And you also touched on just the uniqueness and again, going back to what Rice offers the student and what makes Rice special. So can you speak a little bit specifically to the statement of, the education that Rice offers, and just wrap us up with anything that you haven't shared so far really about what makes Rice University special?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think of it as institutions like Rice as national treasures, and Rice in particular, a gem just right here in Houston, in the heart of Texas. It's a very welcoming environment, and it's one of few private universities that has the undergraduate experience as part of its mission statement. And then, again, back to that excellence of education and research, and really understanding how, whether you're a humanities student, a social science student, a business student, natural sciences, architecture, music, engineering, any of the 7 undergraduate schools, that you can make a difference in this world, that the students really see for themselves this path to being excellent in the realms that matter to them and that they're passionate about. And so students have that passion. And then the faculty, they too are committed to providing that undergraduate education, helping to develop future scientists, researchers, humanists, social scientists, et cetera, solving the challenges that we're going to face in this world. And, I think one of the things that I appreciate about this generation of students is that they're probably the first generation that has grown up really understanding that the world has some significant challenges, whether it's the environment, whether it's social and political, whether it's, finances, food, all kinds of different ways you can focus on what this world needs more of. And the bottom line is that the solutions will come through collaboration. It will come through understanding what, not only understanding your point of view and what you stand and are behind, but also having a sensitivity to why others believe what they believe and why these things matter to them. And until you have that willingness to be empathetic to people that might hold a different view than your own, then we're going to only be just butting heads. We need to get to a point where we can collaborate, we can have an open conversation. We can look at real facts and agree that we see them from slightly different ways, but is there a medium ground or some place in the middle that we can get to create these solutions? And when I talk about Rice creating that collaborative environment, this culture of care, we have an honor code. Our students are self-governed. So even as undergrads, they're having to self-govern through big issues that are hitting and impacting the campus, that they're being forced to kind of think about how this might be impacting your fellow student or the community as a whole. And so I really think it's the education for this generation. And when students find it, they thrive and they fall in love.
I don't think we could have planned a better wrap up for that. Like that, just the way that you pulled all that together of this is the education for this generation. And when students find it, they fall in love. I mean, Yvonne, thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing just more about your journey, your expertise, your passion, how that translated through your dissertation work, how that's changed the industry, and really the institutions that you've worked for, and now Rice University and everything that you've done there, and everything that the institution is doing to serve the area, the students in the Houston area, and really meeting them where they are and offering them something of value that's not only going to change their world, but the world around them. So it's really a pleasure to chat with you today. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you feel is important to share or that you want our listeners to hear?
Wow, we've covered a lot. I'd have to rack my brain if I forgot anything, but it's been a joy, and I really appreciate all that you do to bring the attention to higher education and the importance that it plays in our society. The people that are in this industry believe in the transformative nature of higher education and it really, it's the backbone of our society. And so the better educated communities create just stronger societies. So thank you also for all that you do.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you again for the time today. Thank you all for listening to this episode of the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Our guest today, Yvonne Romero, Vice President of Enrollment at Rice University. I'm your host, Dr. Jody Blinko. We will see you all again soon. Until then, you've just been EdUp.
Mark your calendars now for February 17th to the 19th, 2026. Because if you miss this, you'll be playing catch up all year. This is the future unbound and the most important higher ed marketing and enrollment management conference of 2026. Insights EDU is taking over Fort Lauderdale, where Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top institutions nationwide will pull back the curtain on what's next. Are you ready to adapt or be left behind? Insights EDU 2026 is where leaders become game changers. Register now at insightsedu.com. That's insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15th, 2025.